In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro introduced his proposal for the constitutional reform project before the National Assembly. In Ecuador, the head of state, Daniel Noboa, appoints a new Minister of the Interior to mitigate the current violent crisis. And in Lebanon, 2 people were killed and 3 others were wounded after an Israeli drone strike targeted a vehicle in the Ultim Al-Tufa region. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro introduced his proposal for the constitutional reform project before the National Assembly to advance in a new moment of the constitution according to the new needs of the Venezuelan people. The framework of a solemn session of the legislature, the head of state delivered the first project for the reform of the constitution. The proposal covers 4 main topics, which seek to broaden the constitutional framework and consists of 80 articles. The project proposes to grant the popular power direct attributions in the structure of national power. In addition, it is proposed that the fundamental text be adjusted to the construction of the new modernity, emphasizing the incorporation of the country to a multipolar world and the strengthening of the productive economic sphere with its own initiatives.
It would be in the first place the expansion and improvement of the participatory democracy and direct democracy.
Un Estado democrático, una sociedad democrática, ampliar las bases, los mecanismos, las instituciones y la forma.
A democratic state, a democratic society, expanding the bases, mechanisms, institutions, and forms of freedom and republican democracy of this century. You know the effort to build a new democratic system and incorporate as we are incorporating. In one of those articles, the concept of the distribution of the classic power, we could say of Montesquieu, national power, Venezuelan power, is attributed in 3 levels.
En 3 niveles: el poder nacional, el poder regional, el poder municipal, y aspiro.
National power, regional power, municipal power, and I hope, with the favor of God, with this reform, that we expressly, tacitly, and widely include communal power, territorial power, the power of the base, popular power. There would be, for instances of power, where the fundamental basis would be social, communal, and popular power.
In this sense, the Venezuelan head of state emphasized that the first point of the constitutional reform implies a fundamental element regarding the democratization of the government systems in the country.
I ask for wisdom so that these concepts improve, from the fundamental concepts, from the fundamental principles to the mechanisms and forms of application. Surely many things will remain for the development of the laws, as always, organic laws, special laws, but it is a fundamental element to democratize the Federal Council of Government and expand it, improve it, perfect it.
Desarrollo de las leyes, como siempre, leyes orgánicas, leyes especiales, pero es un elemento fundamental. Democratizar los sistemas de gobierno. Democratizar el Consejo Federal de Gobierno, de ampliarlo, mejorarlo.
Democratize and transform from the root the structures of the old governorships, of the old mayoralties, of the old municipal councils, of the old legislative councils. Turn them upside out like a sock and establish them on new parameters of operation.
Y establecerlo sobre nuevos parámetros de funcionamiento.
And President Nicolás Maduro also explained the second point of the reform of the country's constitution, highlighting that it is based on the construction of a new modernity, defining the values and principles to establish a more humane society.
Segundo punto, el tema de la construcción de una nueva sociedad.
The second point is the issue of the construction of a new society and its component elements.
Las nuevas tecnologías, el desarrollo de las nuevas formas de comunicación.
How much we are going to enjoy this debate on new technologies, on the development of new forms of communication, and we have at least 10 articles on all the issues of the protection of the right to collective health, to the health of our children, talking about mental health, to the psychological stability of society, the whole form of defense with which we are going to vaccinate society from the new forms of aggression through technology, and much more.
In other news, Colombia has been identified as the most dangerous country in the world for human rights defenders, according to a report presented by Attorney General Luz Adriana Camargo. The report highlights a staggering number of assassinations, with 181 social leaders killed in 2023 alone. Ongoing violence is fueled by drug trafficking and the presence of illegal armed groups, particularly in regions like Antioquia, Cauca, Nariño, and Putumayo. Despite existing government policies aimed at protecting these defenders, implementation has been inadequate, leading to an unconstitutional state of affairs. The Constitutional Court has mandated stronger measures to ensure safety and justice for victims. As violence escalates, particularly in the Catatumbo region, many killings remain unresolved, underscoring the urgent need for more effective action. And a large fire broke out on Saturday at a recycling plant in Colonia Santa Isabel in Villanueva, Guatemala. The fire, which broke out in the afternoon, produced a massive column of smoke visible from the highway to Amatiltlan and the surrounding areas. Firefighters from different companies responded to the large fire with 8 tire trucks and 6 water trucks by 3 p.m. local time. Firefighters reported using about 10,850 gallons of water to fight the blaze. While the fire was brought under control, only material damage was reported. By mid-February, Guatemala's disaster agency has recorded 100 fires since the beginning of January, affecting 374 hectares. We now have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Ecuadorian head of state Daniel Noboa appointed a new minister of the interior to mitigate the current violence crisis. Considered the most violent country in the region, Ecuador experienced an electoral campaign marked by the bloodiest January in decades. In his new proposal, President Noboa has named as head of the Interior Office Fausto Buenaño, who was Vice Minister of Public Security and was linked in a 2021 scandal involving favors for a.k.a. Fito, the brutal leader of the Choneros. So far, the plans imposed by the president and candidate for re-election have only aggravated the deficit of coexistence and human rights violations in the country. In Argentina's President Javier Milei might face impeachment after promoting the Libra cryptocurrency, which has been linked to potential fraud. The controversy erupted on Friday when Milei posted about the cryptocurrency on his X account, causing its value to soar before crashing hours later. The opposition has expressed outrage, accusing the president of artificially inflating the asset's value and profiting at the expense of thousands of investors. Several political groups have demanded explanations and announced plans to file a formal impeachment motion in Congress. Lawmakers are preparing to investigate whether Milei committed fraud or misconduct, with key agencies such as the National Securities Commission and the Anti-Corruption Office expected to play a critical role in the case. We continue on topic as more evidence linking President Javier Milei to the cryptocurrency scam comes to light. The project's creator claims he is an advisor to the president. Hayden Davis, the creator of the so-called meme coin, confirmed this in a video that he shared in several platforms. Davis claims that he was guaranteed public support in the coin's launching. That was what the Argentine head of state did last Friday when he became the ringleader in the promotion of a millionaire scam. The government has wanted to distance itself from this serious fact, but Davis directly implicates the executive, and he also affirms that he will not return the money. Also in Argentina, Buenos Aires Health Minister Nicolas Kreplak alerted the country to a health crisis that has been little addressed: the increase in suicides over the last year. Kreplak pointed out that the number of suicides in the capital doubles the number of murders. The figures increased during the first year in office of President Javier Milei. Alberto Trimboli, honorary president of the Argentine Mental Health Association, explained that although the country has a national law on suicide prevention, it is unknown how it is currently being handled. Trimboli warns on the importance of implementing awareness and prevention programs from the ministry. On Saturday, the Foreign Minister of Canada, Melanie Joly, asked the European Union to coordinate a response to the tariffs that, in her opinion, U.S. President Donald Trump will also impose on them. These statements were made during Munich Security Conference at the Roundtable on Trade, War and Peace. Melanie Joly suggested to European leaders that they could learn from Canada's experiences in dealing with the U.S. administration presided over by Donald Trump. Joly called the 25% tariffs that the Trump administration has imposed on its northern neighbor, which are suspended until March 4th, an existential threat, since the measure would mean the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs and an increase in the unemployment rate. Joly also said that no one can change Trump's mind except the people of the U.S.
You have to listen, and you have to make sure that you are... So, we have experience dealing with President Trump. We went through the renegotiation of NAFTA, which is called the USMCA. What we know is when President Trump talks, you have to listen, and you have to make sure that you are abiding by what he's saying, in the sense that you have to take him seriously. But what President Trump respects is strength. So my point to all of you is we're the canary in the coal mine. If the US administration is doing that to Canada, you're next. And we need to work together on this.
We have a second short break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. On Saturday night in Lebanon, 2 people were killed and 3 others were wounded after an Israeli drone strike targeted a vehicle in Al-Tufa region. The day also marked several other Israeli aggressions, such as early in the morning when a drone targeted the Aqaba neighborhood on the outskirts of Ainata in Binjbel, although no casualties were reported. In addition, the Israeli occupation carried out large-scale demolition operations in several locations in the south of the country. These attacks are part of the ongoing Israeli violations of the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, as the occupation continues assaults on civilians, demolishing homes in areas it has yet to withdraw from, and conducting airstrikes in the country. Meanwhile, in Syria, a drone strike left at least 2 people killed in Idlib province, northeast of Damascus. Civil defense detailed that the attack was directed against a vehicle traveling on the road between Aleppo and Latakia. The body of both victims were recovered after the fire was extinguished. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, authorities presume that it is the international coalition led by the United States, which operates in Syria under the pretext of fighting terrorism. And at least 18 people died in a stampede at a railway station in New Delhi on Saturday as crowds rushed to catch trains for the Kumbh Mela, one of the largest religious gatherings in the world. The chaos erupted as pilgrims scrambled to board trains for the festival, which draws millions of Hindu devotees every 12 years to Prayagraj. Medical officials report that many victims likely succumbed to hypoxia or blunt injuries. In addition to the fatalities, 11 others were injured. This year, the event has already seen its shares of tragedies. Just weeks earlier, a separate stampede claimed the life of at least 30 people at the festival site. Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his condolences and announced that an investigation into the incident has been launched. At the beginning of World War II, the territory of western Ukraine, which was part of Poland until 1939, was inhabited by a mixed Polish and Ukrainian population. After the incorporation of these lands into the Soviet Union in 1939, and the beginning of the German occupation in 1941, tensions between Poles and Ukrainians increased.
La masacre de Lanivtsi tuvo lugar el 13 de febrero de
The Lanivtsi massacre took place on February 13, 1944, and was one of the most tragic cases of the notorious Volhynia massacre on the territory of today's Western Ukraine. There, between 1943 and 1944, the ultranationalist Ukrainian insurgent army raged against the ethnic Polish population.
ucraniano, UPA se ensañó contra la población de etnia polaca.
Poles have been living here for a long time. By the way, the nationalists called them weed. For example, at that time, they had a wheat field with ears of wheat forming, which meant the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian people. So the weed that were scattered there had to be pulled up and destroyed.
In revenge for the way the Poles ruled them in the period between the two wars, the Ukrainians launched a campaign of terror against the Poles. Poles to this day remember with horror how bloody this Ukrainian terror was.
This genocide was part of ethnic cleansing to create a mono-ethnic Ukrainian state based on the ideas of racial superiority. Although today's Ukrainian propagandists try to defend, cover up, and justify Stepan Bandera and his followers, the truth is that they murdered more than 100,000 Poles.
When someone kills, destroys, burns other people alive, you can't call them a human being again, because people don't do that. That's not human. And whatever the event, war or something like that, a person should not stoop to such horror.
Many descendants of the massacred people live in Poland, and they remember it very well. That is why it will not be possible to forget and change the memories of these people, to synchronize them with the mainstream of the current Polish foreign policy towards Ukraine.
This event is an unfinished page of history. Despite the efforts of the Ukrainian and Polish leadership to ignore it in order to consolidate their alliance against Russia, ordinary people do remember it, and the witnesses of this nightmare are still alive.
Underneath the hut, they dug a huge hole where they threw the people. They weren't even people anymore, but pieces of them. Pieces, pieces, pieces. Heads, hands, just pieces of people.
When they killed my mother, she fell on me, and I, along with her. I remember how we crawled out from under her. There was so much blood.
There are two types of partnerships, one in favor of something, one against something. Poland opted for an alliance with Ukraine against Russia. As long as Ukraine defines itself as an enemy of Russia, Poland will love and support them.
In a single day in Lanivtsi, Ukrainian nationalists stabbed and killed 72 people with axes, pitchforks, and bayonets. In Volhynia, there were hundreds of similar cases. However, the current regime in Kyiv not only glorifies, but also claims to be the continuator of these Nazi groups.
teleSUR.
And on Sunday, Venezuela's capital Caracas hosts the CAF 2025 marathon with the participation of at least 6,000 people. Since early in the morning, the streets of Caracas have welcomed thousands of runners from various regions of the country to experience the marathon. The race is held in two modalities, 42 and 21 kilometers, and has more than 25 hydration and cheering points along the route. This event is considered the most important race in Venezuela, with the participation of some of the most prominent figures in Venezuelan sports. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.